Once the ship manager selects the type of dry dock, the next step is to prepare the ship to enter the dry dock and carefully place the ship's keel on the blocks provided on the dry dock floor. The boatmaster has to ensure the ship is prepared to enter the dry dock by having the least ballast and no cargo carried on board. If a floating dock is used, the ship's movement will depend on the docking master's requirements and the vessel's condition. If the vessel is immobilized due to an accident, the floating dock will move towards it, and if the vessel is functioning correctly, it may propel inside the dock. The documents required to prepare the dry dock plan include the general arrangement plan, the shell expansion plan, the ship's fire control plan, a plan of the tank arrangements and the distribution of commodities. Related to this, the vessel should provide the plug plan, showing the location of tank plugs. The dry dock will ensure the plugs do not land on a block. The vessel's repair list is sent to the dry dock in advance. This list details the repair work to be carried out. It details services required, machinery to be surveyed or overhauled, and the costs associated with the work. The ship's stability information that must be checked before a ship enters a dry dock are the forward and aft drafts, the longitudinal center of buoyancy, the moment to change trim by 1 centimeter, the GM, the longitudinal center of flotation, and the transverse metacenter. When the ship enters a dry dock, it must have a positive metacentric height, and is usually trimmed by the stern. The floor of the dry dock is lined with keel blocks, which are so arranged such that they can bear the weight of the ship. When the ship enters the dry dock, her centerline is first brought in line with the centerline of the keel blocks by using a combination of plumb lines and mica theodolite. When the ship enters the dry dock, it will be moored to the dock. The docking master will inform the ship's crew beforehand about the trim requirement they must maintain. Before emptying the dock, the ship and dock master must ensure that equipment like an echo sounder or log sensor does not hit any blocks and is clear of any obstruction. For this, divers are sent to check that all such equipment is precise of the blocks. The dock master will give the order to pump the water out from the dock, and slowly, the ship will sit on the keel blocks. The docking master and the ship's crew must ensure the point of contact of the ship and keel blocks does not lie outside the center line of a vessel, as it may lead to the tumbling of the ship. Once the ship sits on the dock, the cleaning and repairing process starts. The dock gates are then closed and the water is pumped out of the dock in stages. Since the ship has a trim by the stern of the ship will first sit on the keel blocks. The rate of pumping out water is reduced as the stern is almost about to touch the keel blocks. The reason is, it is from this stage of the docking procedure when the stability of the ship starts getting critical. The interval of time from when the stern takes the blocks to the moment when the entire ship's weight is borne by the blocks is called the critical period. When the ship's stern just touches the keel blocks, part of the ship's weight is being borne by the keel blocks. The contact between the stern and the keel block creates a normal reaction or upthrust. The magnitude of this upward normal reaction increases as the water level in the dry dock reduces. It is this upthrust that creates a virtual reduction in the metacentric height of the ship. Hence it is very crucial to maintain sufficient positive metacentric height before docking, lacking which, the ship may heel over to either side, or even slip off the keel blocks and capsize. Stability is the most important requirement for getting a ship safely into a dry dock. One of the most important parameters which must be ensured before entering the dry dock is having an adequate initial GM. When the ship touches the blocks, a reaction at the point of contact raises the center of gravity, G, and reduces the metacentric height, GM, so that an adequate initial metacentric height is required to compensate for this. The vessel should be upright. While entering the dock, the vessel must be upright, meaning there should be no port or starboard list when the ship touches the blocks. If the point of contact of the ship and keel blocks is outside the center line of a vessel, it may force the ship to tip over. The vessel entering the dry dock should have a small or moderate aft trim. When making the ship's keel sit on the keel block, a moderate aft trim is usually kept. As the water level in the dock lowers, the slight trim allows the stern and bow to ascend in tandem rather than simultaneously, which will reduce the load and pressure on a vessel's hull and keel. While dry docking the boat, the duty of the crew, under the guidance of the boatmaster, will be to keep the ship at minimum ballast condition. They will have to keep the aft trim as requested by the dockmaster. They have to ensure the vessel is moored by assisting the dock crew once the ship comes inside the dry dock. They have to keep a check on the stability of the ship while the water is lowered in the dock. Once the ship is sitting on the blocks, the ship's crew will pump out the ballast. The crew has to prepare the vessel to connect to the shore power. Once the dry dock water is pumped out, the crew deballast tanks using gravity, and remove the drain plugs from the bottom of the ship for various tanks. Dry docking is one operation that allows the ship's crew to learn areas that cannot be explored when the ship is sailing. It also helps the ship manager to assess the condition of the ship's hull and the machinery which are not accessible when the ship is in water. Bringing the ship to the dry dock is a team effort between the ship's crew and dry dock personnel. Proper communication is the key to safely laying the ship's keel on the keel blocks.